Well, hello and welcome to you all. Welcome to the Offices of Step Change and Safety for our reconvened panel. This is, of course, a follow-on to the panel and global webinar session that we held at our ESR Day back in September, which was enormously successful. And we had asked the offshore and offshore workforce across the world to join us for a global webinar and send in their questions. And we're delighted to say we got a wide and varied list of questions, but sadly we didn't have the time to answer them all. So the reason we've brought you all together again is to go back, re-look at the questions that didn't receive an answer and to provide those today. We have a couple of changes to the panel, but I'm going to let you introduce yourselves. Obviously, I'm Kirstin Gove from Step Change and Safety. Bob, if you'd like to begin by introducing yourself.
Bob Egan, Workforce Engagement Specialist at the Health and Safety Executive.
I'm Craig MacIntosh. I'm Step Change Leadership Team ESR.
Steve Ray, I'm the Executive Director for Step Change and Safety.
I'm Steve Rose, I'm the Health, Safety and Environment Director for Total E&P UK.
And I'm Jake Molloy, Regional Organiser with RMT, with responsibilities for offshore, and sitting here as the Chairman of the Offshore Coordinating Group.
Splendid. So we have 3 out of the 5 of the original panel. We're delighted that Craig could join us as our Step Change and Safety Leadership Team ESR, standing in for Steph Sunley, who took part in the last panel. And we're grateful to Steve Rose from Total for coming along and joining us from the company perspective today, and much appreciated indeed. So let's just kick off the panel, and we'll begin. I think first of all it would be worth having a little look back to the event that we held in September, the reasons behind that, and of course one of the main reasons was the launch of our Safety Rep Essentials suite of resources, which of course Bob, you were spearheading that. Do you want to go back and tell us a little bit about the resources and then just what they're for?
Yeah, so a quick bit on the history. These were actually about 4 years in the making as a direct result of a challenge from the Oil and Gas Authority to West on what good looks like for safety reps. One of the first things we tackled on that was the training for the safety reps. So we revamped the safety rep training, but also to make that worthwhile, we knew there was a much wider scope to get the best out of safety reps for people's constituents, but also to benefit the industry. So we've developed these 3 sets of guidance to cover specifically for safety reps on their own, for OIMs and onshore site managers, and also for onshore support. So it's bringing in supervisors, it's bringing in constituents, and it's giving some help and guidance to onshore support teams that frankly wasn't really there before. Mm-hmm. So now we've got a tool that you can look, you can reference, you could use. That's the idea behind it, and hopefully progress the development of safety reps and safety committees throughout the industry. And
Craig's a safety rep yourself. You know, you've obviously made yourself familiar with the guidance. And how do you feel it's being received?
It's definitely something that's handier, obviously being in a sort of guidebook sort of thing, instead of having to use the guidance as the entirety that it is. Having a sort of quick reference guide, and that is it's showing a big difference in being able to just sort of take out and reference instead of having to, you know, skim through the full guidance in its entirety. So yeah.
And Steve, from a Step Change and Safety point of view, obviously, you know, I think the advice would be to anyone listening is to watch this space as to how we plan to develop this and gauge reaction and make sure it's hitting the mark.
Yeah, so the guidance was introduced in September, and our intention is to ensure that we follow up to make sure that the guidance is not only launched but introduced and people are familiar with how to use it. I think because it's now 3 separate documents, we can target different interest groups around where their specific needs are. But in general, it's a much more referable document. It avoids us using statutory instruments such as compliance regulations to shape our industry going forward in the use of elected safety reps.
Okay, and that's something which will be ongoing, and certainly through our own channels and platforms, there'll be more information coming throughout the year and indeed next year. So if we can move on, and I'd like to take the first of the unanswered questions from the day, and for ease, I'm going to start at the other end of the table with Jake. So the question that arose was that, and it's more of a feeling really, that safety reps are feeling that they have to give up sometimes just because they feel that nothing's getting done on issues that are raised. The suggestion for this is that it's a result of poor stakeholder engagement, irregular progress feedback, ownership and targets on action. The question to the panel is, what is the perception around the frustration that safety reps feel? That it seems to be quite a negative perception around the successful outcomes of what they're doing.
Well, it's a tough one. It's a tough one for lots of different reasons. But first of all, feedback is absolutely critical. I mean, whether it's good, bad or indifferent, you need to get feedback in order to continue that dialogue. What safety reps and sometimes supervisors and constituents need to understand is that they're not always going to get the answer they're looking for. I think that's the other problem, which puts the safety rep in a difficult position, having to go back to his constituents and say, well, the answer is no. And that's where this whole process of feedback is critical. The feedback has to be comprehensive enough to explain why the answer isn't what they were looking for, and give answers and give meaningful justifications for adopting any given position when it comes to health and safety. And I think there's too little of that. For lots of different reasons, the contractual structures, just the communication, the message is lost sometimes as it comes through from the top down to the bottom. So there's a scope of work to be done there, but keeping the dialogue going and getting the feedback is absolutely critical.
And is that what you hear in the industry, that safety reps are giving up for this reason?
No, I don't think they're giving up. They're questioning their worth. They're questioning whether they are able to make a difference. But again, it's a difficult balance, because you're not always going to be able to make a difference in the way that you hope for. I know that from personal experience. I did safety rep for 7 years offshore. It's not an easy task. But if you're given the education, given the support and given that feedback, then you can make a difference.
Steve, I know you brought together all your Total safety reps, or some of the safety reps very recently, in fact, picking up the point about there being a feeling about issues not getting raised. What are you hearing from your own safety reps?
Certainly, yeah, I do hear that. We've run 2 events this year in Total for our safety reps, a couple of day seminars in February and again just a couple of weeks ago. And yes, that message does come through from time to time. Echo Jake a little bit here, to be honest. I think we need to get better at communication. We need to get better at feeding back to people. I often hear, 2 things. One is sometimes we've just not addressed the issue, not given the answer of feedback, or we've maybe only got half the crews. We haven't got the back-to-backs. So I think there's a lot more to be done to try and communicate better with our elected safety reps. I don't think we have all the answers ready yet. Modern technology seems to be the thing that we always kind of think about, but we haven't found the right solution to that. But also, I think it is important, as Jake says, sometimes we need to be open and honest. The priorities might not be the subject that people bring up, and it's far better to say, actually, we're not going to do something with that one, and that's that answer. Given and clearly communicate the reasons why, and you move on to maybe a more important subject. And I think sometimes that's part of the problem. We leave things lingering for too long without a conclusion on it, and that gives that feeling of frustration that nothing is getting done. And it might be consciously we don't plan to do anything, but we need to close the issue down and feed that back to people.
Steve, what are your thoughts on this? Because you've been out meeting safety reps from a number of companies since you've been in the role here at Step Change in Safety. What are you hearing?
So what I'm hearing is that the guidance is very well liked. I'm hearing that at least now they have a document they can refer to and they can use as a means of establishing and continuing conversations with both the OIMs and site supervisors, but also amongst their community as well. So I think the reason why this guidance is here is because it was needed for the very reason that the questions have been asked. It's about better engagement, and certainly absolutely about communication and honest and frank communication at times. And it's just to echo what Jake said, this communication is the lifeblood of any of these initiatives. So these tools that we've created effectively give guidance around how that communication could look and should look, and I think that's what all sides of this stakeholder engagement really needed.
Craig?
Yeah, again, echoing sort of everything that was said there, we do have an element of frustration. You know, any ESR I've spoken to does have that for maybe not getting answers, and you feel that you can't go back to your constituents then because you've not sort of gotten a definitive answer for them. But it's something that I'm quite strong in saying is that I'll get you an answer, but I can't promise it's going to be the answer you want. And that's something I think people struggle with, is that, well, why not sort of thing. But again, I think basically in the question sort of covers it, you know, having a progress report, having an owner with it, having the support of your management onshore, things like that. That's the sort of aim that should be done to get that sort of answers. But I would say that if you weren't getting that, don't be afraid to speak up. You know, to onshore, to your OIMs, give that feedback to them. Sort of try and get a technique or a method in place that will get you answers, or at least give explanations to maybe why things haven't been done quick enough in some people's minds. But again, Steve sort of said it as well, for people that some things might not be getting done, but at least show the guys this is the reason why.
Paul?
Yeah, there's no really much I could add to that. Only thing, if you feel things aren't getting raised or answered, dealt with, the reason you have a safety committee is to close these things out and get answers, get action. Like I say, we've covered that within the Safety Rep Essentials material. That way, you need to get an answer. It needs to get closed out. But also, when you're raising things, it's always easy to come up with a question that is going against maybe what the company is up to. It's a lot more difficult to give solutions to the answers. It's always well worth trying to add a solution to your question, that we believe this isn't working right, or this could be done better by doing this. And if you add a solution to the questions or the queries, the issues, the concerns you may have, then I feel that's got a bit more traction in it to get dealt with in maybe a way that you feel to be more positive.
I'll move us on. Now, this question, it's a bit tricky because we can't go and get clarification of exactly what the person means when they ask this. So I'm going to approach it from two different angles. The question is, how are the HSE's event investigation findings and learnings being shared amongst ESRs across assets and indeed across companies? So we found this when we were doing the panel before. When people are talking about HSE, are we talking about the health and safety executive or health and safety environment? So I think with this one, Steve Rose, if you could perhaps give us some background as to how health and safety findings, not an HSC event or findings, but your own health and safety investigations internally, how you share that information across your company.
Okay, so I guess this is interesting because it's back to the communication challenge again we spoke about in the last question. I mean, our internal process in Total is that after any incident, we issue what we call an incident flash, really, within the first day or so. And that's just the basic information what's happened. And that gets sent around to all of our sites in the UK. So that people are aware of what's happened and they can think about, is that relevant to them or not. We also share that with headquarters, and that's then shared around the world with our sites around the world as well. And then we follow on, we do our investigations, and then once the investigations are complete, then we share again those findings. We run an incident review kind of panel every 3 months. And all the representatives from our sites in the UK are at that. And again, we share in detail the incident findings. So that's our internal process. We also try and share with both Step Change and Oil and Gas UK in some of the forums here, and often we'll introduce something at the beginning of a meeting. Not only us, Total, of course, all the other operators have the opportunity to do the same, and we share things that we think are relevant to others.
And there was a supplementary question as well, Steve, about just how many safety reps, how many ESRs would be involved in those types of investigations and findings?
Yeah, so I mean, our position on it is reasonably clear, but our practice is probably not quite as good as where we want it to be. My message to the OMs on a regular basis is, if there's an incident that happens in installation, the second person they should think about, after the HSE superintendent on site to be called is the safety rep. And the safety rep should be involved right from that very first minute of the investigation. Does that happen every time? I think we've got a bit of progress to make there, but that's where we want to get to. But our position and our processes are clear that safety rep should be involved in every investigation. And we need to train them, we need to give them the right kind of education and skills so they can add value to that. And also it builds up trust then. It builds up trust that they can see open, transparent investigations and they can share that with constituents, and that's the aim of it.
Craig, thanks very much. As an elected safety rep yourself working for a different operator, what's your experience of being involved in health and safety investigations?
Yeah, it kind of comes on the back of what Steve Rose sort of said as well, obviously about training. It's been part of the investigation, but having a sort of element of input to the investigation as well. It's instead of being just a sort of name on a piece of paper, it's having that ability to sort of give some good input, and from personal experience, getting the right training and that has been always good, and we've been getting it to give that input into investigations. And I think from top to bottom, sort of any minor to major sort of incidents that we've had, we've looked to get good involvement with safety reps with that. And again, it's been recognised obviously with our reporting back and that as well, that we've actually been able to give inputs back into it.
Okay, I see. Thank you. And so let's look at it from a slightly different angle then. When the health and safety executive is involved in investigations, how are safety reps involved in that? How many of them? How?
So, depending on the investigation, generally safety reps won't be involved in an HSE, Health and Safety Executive investigation. Certainly the findings of the investigations when they're sent out to the duty holder are always copied to the safety reps as well. If you haven't seen that, or you feel you wanted to find out anything that HSE has been involved in any kind of investigation that may be closer to your platform or the place you work, or the industry, if you like, you work in. Like any government department, you've got freedom of information from the HSE, so you could put in a freedom of information request to see what the HSE have looked into and what they've found. But actually looking into an incident that's happened, in my experience, I've not seen will involve safety reps within that. You can be involved in an HSE inspection as a safety rep, but an investigation, I've not seen that.
No. Okay. Well, thanks for clarifying that.
Kirstin, can I just make a point on that?
Of course you can.
It's been a bugbear for many, many years for me, and I'm sorry, I keep going back to it. It's a hobby horse with me. I would like to see the HSE, I mean, the question talks about sharing and learnings, and I would like to see a different approach with the Health and Safety Executive. It doesn't require a change of regulation, just requires a difference in approach. Using the analogy of incidents with helicopters, when the AAIB, the Air Accident Investigation Branch, look at an event, they produce an early day incident report type thing, just stating the facts, just telling people what happened and what is being put in place to prevent recurrence. And I think that is shared virtually globally for the industry. If HSE were able to do that, if the Health and Safety Executive were able to do that with events, anonymise it, it can't be used for investigations or liability or anything like that, but just an AAIB early day report so that everybody gets to know. And take, for example, the last few months, we've had a couple of fires, we've had an evacuation, and the rumours circulating about those events and the arms and legs getting added, we could diffuse all that. if we had a different approach from the Health and Safety Executive in terms of sharing and learning from events. And I think there's more could and should be done in that respect. Personal opinion, but I think it's time we changed.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea.
Make it happen.
Get after it, Bob.
Okay. Consider it nearly done.
That'd be an action on you. Well, here's a topic that obviously is extremely current, and it's lifeboats. So I'd like all your opinions, please, on the need for lifeboat familiarisation and training. Just all you need to do is Google it or look in the paper at the moment. It's something which is greatly discussed. So nothing fancy. Let's just go down the panel. We'll start with Bob.
Well, the HSCs, I know Step Change are looking into it, which is great, you know, and we'll see how that develops. The HSC's position is quite clear on it, which I support.
Okay. Thank you.
You want to?
Get on that fence, Bob.
Okay, move on.
If you want us to say a wee bit more then, I think real life experience is the best way of doing it, and you get real life experience by going in things and familiarising yourself. That's my position on that.
Thank you very much. Craig, your thoughts?
Yeah, again, it does differ with everyone I've spoken to. You've got some people sitting on the fence, and then some people either way are believing in it. My personal point of view, I think with the technology that we've got at our hands these days, with using VR, using video demonstrations, things like that, I believe that would possibly be another avenue to sort of maybe try and use for people to get that exposure to it. But obviously it's down to the discussions that will be coming out with it. But it's such a difference of opinion with a range of different people, ESRs, people on board, everything like that. But yeah, again, from my point of view, I just see it as a hopefully a way forward for technology to maybe have an input in it to maybe save having to physically go into the craft for doing awareness training with it. But yeah.
It's well known that there's going to be a schedule of meetings taking place on lifeboat loading. And in fact, the elected safety rep forum that we have within Step Change and Safety have been asking when, what's involved and so on. So there is a general awareness that's going on. It's encouraging to know that people are following this development and they will receive feedback on it. So from that, the group met, we appointed co-chairs. The meeting was minuted. The minutes will be circulated early this week, so it'd be remiss of me to talk about them without the panellists being informed through the attendees. It was well attended. There were 20 people in the room, predominantly asset owners and operators, because that's the group we're talking to. The HSE were in the room. Going forward, the intention is to have elected safety reps represented there and other stakeholders that will need to be there. So, yep, it's going on. The need for it, we wouldn't be meeting if there wasn't a need for us to get to a place where we have consistent standards and approach across the industry. So it's work in progress. So, can I get you what you wanted to know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Steve, can you give us the total view on the whole matter?
Well, I'm pleased that Step Change has stepped in to try and take this one on, because it has been going around for a wee while now. I certainly think back to my early time in the industry where I crammed myself in with 50 other people into a lifeboat every weekend, actually, as part of familiarisation. That's maybe one end of the extreme, and the other is maybe some sites you go to and people have never been in the lifeboats ever, and that's maybe the other end of the extreme. So there's clearly an issue to tackle. I do think that we have to tackle it collectively like this, and I think we need to have an open mind as an industry, including the regulator, that there could be a number of different approaches, and what we might end up with is something that actually allows for 2 or 3 different approaches, but all of them being appropriate and acceptable. So hopefully we can reach a good solution after this.
Jake, if I was playing devil's advocate, you see, maybe it's the ex-journalist in me. I think, if I'm out there and this is really affecting me, and I'm hearing people saying we'll have to wait, we'll have the meetings, I would want answers. And how can we guarantee that we'll have a conclusion to this matter, we'll have a suitable outcome in the not too distant future, or can we?
Oh, I think we can, because we've done it before. We've done it with lots of different things, lots of events, and it's, I think we've got to look back at events to determine how we approach this. We've never had a serious injury or a fatality doing lifeboat familiarisation. We've had fatalities doing maintenance. But we've got to accept that there's this perception, this concern about putting 50 people in a boat now. It wasn't in Steve and I's day, but there is now. So it's finding that balance in between that. We're not saying that every Sunday everybody's going to get stuck in a lifeboat. What we're saying is that at some point during the course of your stay on an installation, you will be asked to go and sit in a lifeboat so that you're familiar with it in the event you have to use it. Because God forbid you turn up at a lifeboat in a serious event and your muster checker and your coxswain are there because they're away or trapped somewhere else. You're going to have to take charge. So I think there's finding that balance, but it comes back to the communication piece again. And I know it's coming from safety reps, what's our view, but I'm more interested in what their view is. I'd like the feedback from the safety rep community and from offshore workers generally, because I've had both ends of the scale in recent meetings with members. One saying I'm off my head for suggesting we get into lifeboats, until you explain to them, I'm not asking for 50 guys on a Sunday afternoon to get in a lifeboat. I'm saying that at some stage during the year, you do one familiarisation process for half an hour. That's it.
Right, it's a mixed bag of questions, so this is kind of moving on somewhere else. It's possibly just for Craig and Steve Ray. It's a suggestion that we could do more cross-industry with the lessons that we've learned. There's a suggestion that the Step Change in Safety, perhaps, that we could be using our Step Change in Safety leadership team, ESRs, to meet with other safety reps in other sectors, in other industries like nuclear, construction, renewables. What do you think, you two? Craig, Steve, whoever wants to answer.
Pitch in, Craig.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer in that. Obviously, the more interaction with more industries, you're never going to end of learning lessons. So it could only make things better, really, by having that interaction. But again, it's having from our point of view, I suppose, if we're keen to do it, it would be having the buy-in from these other industries and sectors. So it's obviously a good discussion to maybe have, but Steve might have.
And it's the time and the facilitation.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, great points, Craig. For me, we can never shy away from having an opportunity to learn from other sectors and other industries. I've said since joining Step Change sometime ago in July that we need to find a specific purpose around how we use our elected safety reps and specifically our Step Change in Safety reps. And I think we need to approach, and we will do, same as we approach some of our other work groups such as West and Competency, where we have these sessions on a fairly frequent basis where we, as part of the session pull together, we have people come in and do presentations on best practice or good practice or opportunities to learn elsewhere. And I don't think we should be treating our elected safety reps any differently. And if we have the opportunity to pull someone in from, be it the nuclear or the marine side or even the building construction area, there's always opportunities to learn, but it's how we interface with them. And I think we have to create the right forum where people feel comfortable enough and engaged enough that they're going to give up their time and attend for value-adding opportunities. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to create the purpose and the environment to allow that to happen. There's a willingness across industry for sure, and there's certainly a willingness in Step Change to facilitate that.
It's needed. It's certainly needed in other parts of the industry. I was recently at a meeting with a lot of safety reps through the CIA, which wasn't the American CIA, it was the Chemical Industry Association. When I got the email, would you like to attend a meeting with the CIA? I'm like, okay. But and the group of reps that were at that meeting, it's the same things, it's the same issues. We've got a lot of solutions to the problems that people through various work surrounding situations are in. We've tried to cover in that. So some of the things within the safety rep activities may not be able to get used on shore, but also there's things that can't get used offshore, you know, but the general vast majority of the stuff is exactly the same.
Because there's another question about should we be looking to other countries to learn from their safety culture and their offshore regulations?
Can I pitch in with that one? I guess like some of us in the room, I've worked, the pleasure of working in other areas of this world where, dare I say, health and safety is not given the same focus as certainly we do in this area, in this basin. It's interesting that those countries, and there's been few of them, are eager to learn what we do here. It's difficult to get learnings coming back away. It's not impossible because typically I see what we do here, not just in step change, but as an industry, as being well developed, mature, and almost leading edge. You know, so there's an appetite for us to share what we do, but we should never be closed to learning from other countries and other basins. It's just creating that forum, whether it's through IOGP or it's through intercompany exchanges with global companies such as Total and Shell and BP, who certainly arrange to transfer information inside their companies that they can bring to our table. So, yeah, don't underestimate how advanced and mature our systems are and well sought after.
Maybe add, coming back to the first question, I think we can facilitate a little bit more cross-industry sharing and potentially, visit by safety reps to other industries. Companies like Total and some of the other operators in the UK are actually quite wide-ranging in what we do now. Our activities are across a number of sectors. We're planning in next summer to take some of our own safety reps down to our battery manufacturing division down in Newcastle as part of looking at what they do. And I would say, as Steve mentioned there, it can be two-way. It can be learning from them, but it can also be sharing a little bit of what we do. Few years since we did it, but we did go to one of the nuclear sites in Scotland as well with our safety reps, probably going back now 5 or 10 years ago. So there is opportunities to do that. There's always a challenge to make it happen, to get it to actually work. But I think we can do a little bit of that, and probably through step change we can talk about how we can all help to try and do something. Maybe even if it's once a year we can do something. It's worthwhile.
Thank you. Jake, I'm going to come to you with this one. And again, it's one of those questions that's maybe open a little bit to interpretation. The exact wording was, how does the panel feel that the elected safety rep scheme could be improved? Is the scheme the best it can be? Now, is that how elected safety reps possibly work in the existing framework?
I think it all depends what you mean by the scheme.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, my own experience is that you take the safety rep, safety committees regulations and couple that to the documents that have been produced in the last few months, and you've got the basis upon which you work. And I'm not saying you stick rigidly to it, but if you apply the principles which are captured in this and in those regulations, you're going to be pretty much on the money in this regards adhering to, delivering, and really providing what your constituents want. Remembering that you are an elected safety rep, and therefore you're the voice of that constituency. And if your constituency feel that their voices are being heard, then you're pretty much on the money. You're pretty much on the mark and delivering what Lord Cullen envisaged in terms of workforce engagement, what the regulations envisage in terms of what safety reps' roles and functions are, and what this guidance now suggests you should be doing. So it's just applying yourself to what's there. I think you'll deliver on the scheme.
So I'd just like to echo a couple of points that Jake certainly raised there. The regulations as they were first introduced, as most regulations are sort of compliance driven, are very blunt. I think with the introduction of the guidance, we've got the ability to fine-tune some of those to meet the specific needs of the industry and the installation. That said, if these guidance documents, or be it the regulations, just sit on the shelf and gather dust, we're never going to move on. Yeah. These are very good tools that have been designed by the right people, actually, for the right community in mind, that if they're embraced the right way, they will only deliver what was expected of the elected safety rep community. So I think we're in a great place with the addition of these guidelines to really make a, dare I say it, step change in how we use our elected safety reps. And I'll close off my part of this in saying companies need to understand that they've made an investment in elected safety reps, and they would expect a return on their investment from anything else in their business. So start approaching this, that there is a return to be had out of the investment, and look for it and foster it. And I think that's what's needed.
Why is there less of a focus on E-reps and green teams when companies face big fines from releases or hydrocarbon releases?
Well, safety reps should be copied in all the information, like I said earlier, on investigation. The problem we've got, problem is the right word, with E-reps and green reps is not everybody has them, and there's no legislation to support having them, which is slightly unfortunate. What we've said in the safety case regulations, if you have E-reps and green teams, co-opting them into a safety committee gives them access to all this information. And a good open sort of culture within a company, they should be sharing it with everybody. That includes the E-reps and green reps. For safety reps, one way or another, because the environmental issues are within a safety case, they need a level of understanding and training on that as well. But if you've got good E-reps and green teams, it's brilliant. They're worth their weight in gold, and they could deliver it. But you've got, as a company, then set something aside to specifically involve them, and that means involve them more than managing just bins and waste segregation. There's a lot more to E-reps and green teams than that. So they should be consulted along with everybody, but as far as legislation goes, there's nothing really covering them.
Okay, right, well answered. Again, I'm going from topic to topic here, but this is what everybody wants to know. Mental health and well-being of the workforce, something which is being discussed at many levels. Steve Rose, if I can come to you first with this one, the question is, how is mental health and the well-being of the workforce being practically addressed? Many companies are paying lip service to the importance, but offering little practical help. Can you give us your view from the operator's side of things?
I certainly understand the question. I think we all recognise that we were maybe a bit late getting on the journey, and getting moving on mental health awareness and equipping people to both be understood and to support them. I think there's a lot going on. Step Change have been working in this area with mental health first aiders and champions of courses. We've been doing that in Total now for the last sort of 12, 15 months or so, and we're trying to tackle it basically top to bottom. So ran a session last year for the executive committee to actually let them understand their role and how they could actually help in this area, and we also tackled our managers to make them better equipped to recognise the signs of mental health in the workplace. And we're really trying to roll out more training for our workforce offshore as well. I think there's a couple of gaps that we've got to try and address as the industry. We can get people, a few only, who can come to our offices, come onshore and can help with training courses and awareness sessions. We haven't got many people who can go offshore. We haven't got people who are actually able to go off to the sites and do sessions offshore, so I think we need to tackle that. And I think we need a bit more work along with ourselves and the medical providers as well to look at what the role of the offshore medic is in this area and to see how much training they have or what they possibly need to also help support the installations.
Thanks. Jake, yeah, sorry.
I think there's a lot of good work being done, but it seems to be at a very high level. When you talk to when you talk to the lads, sorry, the workers offshore, there's a real concern, and I think it's justified given what I've seen the last couple of weeks, a real concern that talking about it is going to see you put off. You know, to say that you've got a problem, to say that you're suffering with stress, a bit of depression, that you're anxious about anything, can see you suffer as a contractor, and I think that's a difficult one for the operator to deal with, because a lot of the time they're not even aware that the contractor is taking the actions that they have. I say that because of an example I've seen just in the last couple of weeks where one lad was taken off an installation as part of an emergency. He's home for less than 48 hours and he's immediately mobilised to a different installation, and then is subsequently taken off that installation because there's a problem. You know, I mean, I don't think the best preparation to put him back out to an offshore installation was having to be evacuated for an emergency and immediately mobilising him within 48 hours. And the way I was looking at it, and the way I still look at it, is that the contractor was just pushing too hard rather than taking a wee step back and talking to the individual concerned. When the guy said, well, I felt stressed, the immediate response for the contractor was, well, why did you not say anything? And he didn't say anything for the very reasons he was now sitting in the room. So it's a difficult one. I think there's some good work being done, but I think there's a bigger conversation to be had, and especially what Steve said about the medical profession, the medics, the confidentiality aspects of it, and how it's dealt with. I think there's a lot of learnings yet to be made.
Craig, if I can come to you, it's the same kind of, it's obviously the same theme, and it centres around the Are You OK Day. And we do have some videos on our YouTube channel from a couple of years back, focused on the Are You OK Day, but it's not something we've been involved with recently, but the accusation was that the Are You OK kind of movement day wasn't given too much of a sense of importance and just adds to the general lip service feel to the industry's approach to mental health. And maybe you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, again, with the Are You OK, I suppose we were talking about it previously, that it's sort of an initiative out with the UK that was sort of brought in, and again, it's been sort of covered between Jake and Steve as well, you know, with the whole mental health aspect, that it's maybe not just oil and gas, it's not just step change, it's not just our industry that's not sort of come to the table with mental health. It's more with the sort of the whole of the UK, you know, the mental health, and a sort of statistic that goes with it is that the single biggest killer in men under 45 is suicide, but it doesn't get the same sort of appreciation that it sort of deserves. So having initiatives that Step Change are running with the Champions course to try and get people involved in that aspect, to see the signs, to be able to be an extra person for someone to go to on a platform, things like that. It is sort of major importance, and although it's quite late in us coming to the table with that sort of thing, it's good now that we're actually addressing it more and having that sort of open culture, you know, coming forward.
Well, it's a good kind of point to round up our panel session. Some of the questions were of a similar theme. So if anybody's listening in, I hope you've understood that I've kind of merged some of the questions, particularly around the safety rep regulations and how that all works. I'd just like to finish off then by picking up on what you were saying there about it always comes down to good communication. At the end of the day, and I've worked in communications all my professional life, there's no silver bullet. It's getting people to communicate better and making people assured that there'll be no repercussions, and that communicating and speaking out is okay. And I know, Jake, you're a great advocate for this. You know, should we be having more sessions, do you think? You know, how do we constantly encourage people to communicate with us?
I really struggle with this one. I mean, again, I go back to my own time. there was an apprehension at first when you become a safety rep, or indeed as a constituent, to challenge, to question. But with challenge and with question, if it's done in a constructive way, like Bob was saying, if you're going to challenge, come up with a solution as well. If you're approaching it in that manner, then it builds a better trust, a better respect. It builds those relationships, and you can create an environment where you absolutely feel able to have that conversation without fear of retribution. But as long as we continue to shy away from that, and it's understandable, then how do we deal with it? I think there's 5 guys sitting here who would quite happily take an issue and progress it on behalf of anybody that didn't feel able to challenge it. We've got systems, we've got reporting systems, we've got the Safety Rep Network, we've got apps and whistleblower lines and goodness knows what. Use them if you don't feel able, but the bottom line is talk to us, communicate, because if we don't know what's going on, if we're not aware of the issues that are affecting you, then we can't change it, we can't address it. So communicate, whatever way you feel comfortable with, but communicate and get it out there.
If I can move up, Steve, for a final word from you.
Yeah, well, I think we all recognise communication is tough. You've been in your whole career in it, so we should be learning all from you, Kirstin. You'll help us solve it. But yeah, there's more to be done. I thought a couple of years ago the wrong answer was kind of the modern apps and things. I'm actually beginning to think there is a place for them a little bit. As we get better Wi-Fi in our sites offshore, if we get people, younger people certainly use it. My kids use apps for everything. So I think there's a place for them, but they can't just be one way. So if you create an app and let people put their comments in, somebody needs to respond to those things. There have to be some sort of way of using it. So we need to think about that a little bit. But talking to people still works. Engaging with people still works. Going to the site and talking to the safety reps, definitely still works. And doing the seminars that Step Change run or that each individual company run as well definitely work as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, just on the improving communication, as I said, for me, two-way communication is the lifeblood of how we develop our business going forward, certainly in the health and safety space. So we're pulling together an OEMs network. We're creating an OEMs network because we recognise that is supportive of the elected safety reps, and it also allows leadership offshore to get involved on topics that are cross-industry. I think we've always committed to doing the right thing where we think it's necessary in step change in safety. And if this event works where we do a committee response or a table response to matters that are raised offshore, we could change the blend of the table. If it requires an OIM at the table, or it requires a contractor representative at times, or an additional elected safety rep, we can make these forums happen. We have the ability to do that. And I think if that provides a voice or a response and feedback to folks that are not in a place where they feel comfortable enough to raise issues without it being almost anonymous, then we're okay with that, because the more you communicate, the better you are at it, the more effective it becomes and the more you encourage it. So we certainly must continue to focus on how we can improve that environment. And let's not forget, we're still doing a cross-generational move right now where some of us are not as comfortable in apps as others. And I think a written or an emailed communication is the place to be. Or, as Jake rightly said, pick a phone up and talk to someone you know, whether it's an elected safety rep or a union person, or HSE is in Bob's space. Let's just make sure that we use all the avenues open to continue good dialogue and increase engagement and collaboration.
Craig is by far the youngest member of the panel here.
A wee bit
Maybe it's a generational thing.
You'll just say an app then. Craig will just say an app.
The confidence to communicate, the confidence to speak up.
Yeah, again, it comes back to that open door policy, from whether it's offshore or onshore, whatever it is going offshore maybe as a new start, and that having the confidence to speak up if you don't feel something's right, and that it's sometimes lacking because you're believing that the sort of guys who have been there for however long is doing the right thing, or that should be out the window. And from my point of view, from my platform, there's no lacking in having the confidence to speak up from anyone, and for getting the support back the way. That's the other key part of it. And obviously Steve's rightly said, you know, having the ability to pull in OIMs and that to get their sort of side on it, and that it definitely needs to be covered a lot more, you know, between the both sides of it. But yeah, I like the app idea, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, noted. Okay, finally, Bob.
Yeah, communication, consultation, listening to people. Sometimes just listening to people and letting them talk is an important thing of that. Realising what you've got in the industry a lot of the time, especially when it comes to the contracting community, because sometimes for people to speak up and maybe put what they may perceive their job or their wage or their next trip on the line because they're working for like trip to trip or small contract to small contract, people will protect that and protect their wages and protect their families' income. So it's having one thing or a thing in place to make it easier for these kind of people to talk, because a large part of this industry doesn't know what they're doing in 2 or 3 trips time, maybe even 1 trip time, if they got another job to go into. So it's realising that that's out there, that exists, and there's, like he says, there's no one silver bullet. There needs to be a lot of different avenues that people could use, and certainly the contracting part of the industry has got a large part to play in that, because that's what 80% of the workforce, I reckon. So they're probably some of the biggest players in that, and most of them are members of Step Change, if not all. So use what we've got, use Step Change, use the forums that are out there to get the message out to people to talk, but also to be willing to listen.
Well, thank you very much indeed to all of you for taking part. Just finishing on the communication point, our email at Step Change and Safety is info@stepchangeandsafety.net. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube. We're all over the usual channels. There are multiple ways to get in touch with us. I would appreciate your feedback on this panel and anything that you would like to see in the future. I think we will be running these more regularly, and we'll be looking for feedback, questions and topics to be discussed. But in the meantime, to you all, thank you very much. You can stand down.
Thank you.